Hey everybody, John Grauman here from the Grauman-Rosenfeld Group at the agency. Today I want to talk to you about some new changes that have taken place recently that are impacting the real estate industry. Now, you've probably heard some mumblings and grumblings about this. You may have read something in the media, but I want to talk a little bit more clearly and concisely about how this impacts both buyers and sellers alike. Okay, so let's dive right in. There have been a handful of recent policy changes that are impacting the real estate industry, not so much the real estate market, but certainly making a big difference in the way agents like myself are conducting business. Let's talk about some of those are. There's two in particular that are definitely making the biggest headlines and creating the most amount of confusion. One is that the commission that is offered to the cooperating broker, that is to say the buyer's agent, can no longer be advertised on the MLS. Now, this is quite interesting because that was originally one of the intended purposes of the MLS, was to be able to have a place to advertise those commissions. But that, moving forward, is no longer. Now, what does that mean to you? Well, it creates a little bit of confusion, frankly, because now, as an agent or as a buyer, you have to reach out to each individual listing agent for each individual property to find out whether or not they are offering said commission and what that amount is. It's all negotiable. This is one of the primary changes moving forward. How does this affect you as a consumer? Well, if you're working with an agent, it just means that that agent is going to need to call on each listing you might be interested in to find out whether or not they're offering a commission and how much. It's all negotiable. And guess what? It always has been. The whole idea here is to simply create more transparency so that it's clear that the commission is now a part of that negotiation. Why do this? Why make this change? Well, ironically, it's tried to guard against something called steering. Steering is where you have certain bad actors in the community that might be guiding their clients towards properties that are offering higher commissions, rather than just putting their needs first and guiding them to the property that's the best fit for them. The irony of this is that while we never really looked at the commission being paid to the cooperating broker before, we always just assumed it was whatever the custom was for each market. Now, that's sort of the first thing we have to look at because it's no longer advertised, so we got to call and find out how much are they offering and how does that factor into the equation. The second major policy change that I think is really throwing people for a loop is that buyers are now required, that's right, required, to sign a buyer-broker agreement with the agent they're working with prior to even going to view properties. In fact, as an agent, before I engage in any agent activities like running comps or showing properties to a client, I'm now required to get my client to sign this broker agreement. Now, be very careful here because there are multiple different kinds of agreements and they can be filled out multiple different ways. There are the exclusive versions of the agreement. There are non-exclusive versions of the agreement. There are agreements that can run a maximum of 90 days. There are agreements that can run a maximum of 30 days. There are what's called touring agreements, which have no mention of compensation, but just authorize me to be able to show you 123 Main Street. This is where it gets a little bit tricky, so make sure you're working with a qualified professional that's going to sit down with you and go through a formal buyer consultation to not only understand what your needs and wants are as a buyer, but to also explain these new changes and how they may impact you. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to DM us, or better yet, sign up for one of our upcoming homebuyer success workshops where we're going to dive even deeper into all these various topics and talk about how we can help set you up for success in this evolving market.